Entrepreneur Jason Dare shares his riveting story this week on The Trailblazers.
Tamara, this is really special for me because I watch all of your episodes.
You're born and grow uptown. So they might look on and they're like, I don't know what kind of challenges he could possibly face.
For the first 2-3 months of my time back in Canada, I slept on the floor in the winter. Marriage wasn't working out. At the time, I sold a business in Jamaica, sold most of our assets, if not all, moved back, made sure they were okay. Tamara, when God speaks to you, you must listen. The key, I believe, to success is not just dreaming, but execution.
Stay tuned.
The most prominent producer then in the industry tell Tony that he could not boss a female artist because
Failing is one thing. Failing publicly is a very hard thing.
I said I was holding my mouth, the lies were going, and I sat and I saw women on the TV just lying bluntly, just like that.
Released the all media survey, and when you look at the name Ron Mouchette, 0, 0.
You know, I had to fend for myself at an early age. In fact, my mother became mentally ill when I was 9 years old.
I sold everything and went to my wife and said, and she said to me, all right, no problem. She will back me. Just leave the house.
From entertainers, politicians, business leaders, and more, The Trailblazers with Tamara McKayle on YouTube has it all.
That I'm new to that.
I did movies with Denzel Washington. Then I wrote Baps, and that's starring Halle Berry.
You wrote Babs!
I wrote Baps,
Oh no!
Subscribe now for a brand new year of inspiration and strategies to make it from the best of the best. Plus, catch up on episodes you may have missed. It's The Trailblazers with Tamara McKayle on YouTube.
This week on The Trailblazers, I am delighted to have this very talented and accomplished young businessman. Yes, I'm calling him young, even though he would say otherwise. The name Jason Dare. He is the managing director rather of Link to Lenders and Real Estate Hub, but he prefers the title Chief Servant. Jason, welcome to The Trailblazers. Such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me, Tamara. This is really special for me because I watch all of your episodes, and the people that I see, the folks that I see you have on the Trailblazers, I really wondered why you asked me to come on the Trailblazers. The other day I was watching your episode with Minister Marian Hall, and she's so inspirational. My Lord, the lady moved me to tears. So I really wondered why you had me. But anyway, I'm happy to be.
Well, you are definitely here because you are indeed an accomplishment and a trailblazer in your own right. And you may have seen Jason in other interviews discussing his business and his ventures. But this is more in terms of his personal story and legacy, which we will touch a bit, yes, on the business aspect, but it's more in terms of his own personal journey, his challenges, his trials, you name it. All right. So Jason may not recall, but I actually met Jason some years ago when I was a university student and I was freelancing at the time with Owen James for a segment of his show called The Achievers. And at the time, you had a business called, it was a chemical business. I think it was No Brand.
Chemicals.
Yes,
No brand
yes.
Yeah.
And then since then, so we can see that he's always been into entrepreneurship. So let me start there, Jason. You've always, as I mentioned, seemed to be somebody that's into entrepreneurship. You've tried your hands at different things. What is it about you? Was it something that from you were a little boy that you always knew you were going to be like a businessman and run your own companies?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for making me feel old by you saying that you were in university and I was already working.
That doesn't say, but come on, Jason.
I'm joking with you. Anyways, I'm joking. No, so the truth is, Tamara, I think a lot of it came from or comes from my family's history. And I will obviously take the lead from my mother. She has always been the entrepreneurial type from I've been a little boy. Even to this day, I won't tell you what her age is because she would kill me. But even when she owned her own big established business, she always had something doing on the side. And even today, she makes bracelets and those types of things just on the side, separate and apart from running her consultancy. So I kind of got that inspiration from her in my early days, and in my extended family were typically mostly in business. So that kind of sparked that interest for me, and I learned a lot from them. Now, I think, I genuinely believe that God puts everybody on this earth for a reason and gives you a purpose. When you are a child, and I encourage anybody who is a parent to look at their children closely and see what their kids are passionate about naturally. Because I never realized it at the age, but when I was a child, my natural inclination was to always go in that direction of so-called entrepreneurship. And I'll tell you a story of one of the things that I did when I was a child. And I'm not saying I'm proud of it today, but I'll still share the story. So one of my next door neighbors, in a complex that I lived in, a small complex, had a lime tree at the back of their house. And I remember specifically when everybody went to work and I was on holiday, I would pick the limes off of the tree, come back inside, put them in bags, for example, and sell them back to the very same neighbors. So the neighbors used to wonder, how come my lime tree looks empty or sparse? And then Jason is now here selling me limes. So those were the little things that I started to do. I remember one time
We're literally chopping the tree.
Well, climbing it and picking the limes.
Yes, the lime tree.
But it wasn't for purposes of just eating limes. It was to really sell back the limes.
Yes.
No, maybe I shouldn't have sold it back to them, but hey, it was a market anyway. So I went after it. And little things like, I remember my house, the backyard growing up a lot. And my mom, for whatever reason, didn't have it cleared. And I offered at maybe 10 years old, I said to her, if me and my friends down the lane help to clear the land without you having to pay us, would you allow me to grow like peppers? And one of the first plants that I grew were Scotch bonnet peppers. So I had limes and peppers together that I would sell to the folks in the area. So,
Yes.
that's kind of like where the interest for me kind of started.
Wow, that's very interesting.
And encouraged by my parents.
And encouraged by your parents. I mean, you are a proud George's old boy. Went to what kind of student were you? Because you seem to be the type of person that was very cheeky.
I was a horrible student. Horrible student. I knew naturally I was never academically very smart. I'm not calling myself dunce, but I guess going to St. George's College, being in a classroom of 40 boys, you were more focused on things like sports and girls and parties rather than schoolwork. So I knew I was relatively smart, but unlike people maybe like yourself, Tamara, I had to actually apply myself to really do well. So when I went to St. George's College, it was nothing but fun for me, and that is why I'm still so involved in the school. It's almost like I didn't want to leave. So no, I was a very below average student. More of I don't want to say not a bad kid, but like most of us, a troublemaker. And there's another story about St. George's College, which I don't share very often, but in my second week in first form, I was suspended from school. And I don't share it very openly. No, it wasn't me alone. It was a few of us, if not maybe the whole entire class. But I thought at the time I was going home to get a few days off. But no, the principal at the school at the time had us come back to school for those 2 days to clean up the school. So it wasn't a go home free for all time. But I wouldn't change my time at St. George's College for anything in the world. It really has helped to mold me into the person that I am today.
But just out of curiosity, why were you guys suspended? Or you can't say?
I can. I mean, just generally, to be honest with you, we were all feeding off of each other in terms of our energy. And just, very talkative. Boys have a lot of energy, ego. There's just so much happening in the school. And there's also a very strong school spirit at St. George's. And I'm sure like other boys' schools where we are very much into our sports and that type of stuff. So it's just a culture that, just ran through the entire school. And I think, they have a few boys who are like ringleaders, who I wouldn't call myself a ringleader, but you tend to just follow along and it just all became fun.
Okay, so boys just being boys then. But you mentioned something which I wanted to stick on just now, because in terms of the fact that you were saying that you didn't think you were quote unquote academically inclined or really book smart, but at the same time you're a successful businessman. And I was actually having a discussion recently with a close friend of mine who is very successful in terms of, his business and running a company and things like that. And he had a similar sentiment that he wasn't necessarily the brightest among the lot. But we tend to find that even when we look at the stories of a Mark Zuckerberg or, a lot of these really accomplished individuals, a lot of times they were not necessarily bookies. So is it a case then that clearly it's showing that you don't necessarily need to be like, quote unquote, a bookie to do well at a business?
Right. No, the truth is that I genuinely believe that success really comes from, well, one, having a dream. And I'll encourage everybody out there, whether you're 16 or 66, your dream is free because nobody can stop you. You could be locked in a prison cell. If you have time to dream. And then the key, I believe, to success is not just dreaming, but execution. Michael Leachin, the first time I heard somebody say this was success is 1% idea or 2% idea and 99% execution. I think some people are afraid of failure. I have become accustomed to it. And I've done many things over the years from I've been a teenager to now that I have failed at, and I just keep going further. And that is really where, your purpose comes in. I don't think you necessarily have to be very book smart. I'm not encouraging any young man or young woman out there to not be book smart. Yes, it is important that you go to school and get a good education because not necessarily everybody is made to be an entrepreneur. It's not an easy task. And I'm sure Tamara, you yourself can attest to that. But it is really trying to discover what your purpose is, first and foremost, and executing on it. I think is really the key to success in anything that you do.
Certainly. All right. So you mentioned a bit of your businesses over the years from you were a little boy till now, and some of them have failed. And that brings me actually to my next question. So tell us about some of your business ventures and, what led you into them, what led you out of them to what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, I mean, most of the other ones in the past were very small things that you would kind of do from home or from university dorm. But, we've had many ideas from as far back as in the early 2000s, late 90s, which I don't want to necessarily get into all of them, but use no brand chemicals as one example. As you hear the name no brand, it's not a name that people would naturally think of creating off the bat, because who wants to build a brand name or a name brand, or a brand called no brand? But what people don't realize is that you have to be able to differentiate yourself or your product or your brand in order to stand out, because the worst thing you can do is really just blend into the wall, as my mom used to say, because you would never be successful in that case, doing the same thing that everybody else is doing. No brand, I wouldn't say was a failure by any means at all. What we realized after a certain while, so we were a manufacturer of household cleaning and industrial chemicals. But one of the things we realized is that the market was very fragmented in terms of you have imported brands, you have local brands. What was happening to is one of our distributors who brought in raw materials for us started breaking the bulk and started selling to my customers behind my back. So at a point, and this is another thing that I want all entrepreneurs to understand or to realize, it's not about giving up, but there's a word that I use called pivoting, which is very important. If something in life is not serving you, you need to pivot away from it, whether it be a relationship or a job or a business. If it is not serving you, then you need to move away from it and start again, or find some other way to make it work. So that was one of the issues that we found happening. And then what had happened was another person that I knew was in the industry as well. And he and I were competing for the same customer. So it's almost like operating two businesses, but competing for the same customer. And I approached him one day and I said, hey, why don't we merge operations and work as a team versus working against each other? And anyway, he agreed. We started out doing it that way for a while. I don't want to necessarily speak off the top of my head, but when the merged entities at the time, you're talking maybe 10 years ago or more, or less, sorry. The merged entities were generated close to, I would say, close to $100 million in sales at the time.
Wow.
Now, which then led me to the second chapter of my life, which was moving back to Canada after that merger happened. I really realized that I didn't want to be a part of that industry anymore. So I don't want to necessarily call it a failure, but again, you have to learn to pivot away from things when, it's not really working.
Certainly. And speaking of Canada, people would look on and probably think, well, this guy looks like an uptown youth, right?
Far from it.
Yeah, you're born and grow uptown. Nothing is wrong with that. That's your story. So they might look on and they're like, I don't know what kind of challenges he could possibly face, because he might have life easy. He might have links, connection, you name it. So tell us about your experience and your journey in Canada, career-wise and otherwise, if you feel like so.
Right. So the truth is that, well, I went to university in Toronto between the ages of 18 to 24, whatever the age group was. And my most of my extended family lives in Canada. And so does my oldest. My daughter lives in Canada now as well. So the truth is behind that, that personal part of my story. Now, I want to just backtrack 1 second to the whole part about me growing as an uptown boy. No, that's the truth. I can't deny that.
Nothing is wrong with that.
No, but the truth is that I like to talk about my history, my family's history. Now, many people don't realize is that I'm also mixed. So my mom's side of the family is Chinese. My dad is half black, half white. So I am what you would call a mongrel, a mix of everything. Right now,
call yourself a mongrel.
Yes, I did actually. And truthfully, that when I listen to the story of my mother's side of the family, coming from China, for example, and my grandmother coming from Panama as a Chinese woman, they all came over on like banana boats, risking their lives on the seas to come to Jamaica and starting like a shop downtown Kingston, where it wasn't easy. They didn't speak the language necessarily to start. The stories I heard from my grandmother was that her mother and father, being in Jamaica before, were not educated. They weren't, they didn't know how to read and write necessarily. I remember telling me stories about counting bags of rice using sticks. You remember when you're a child, you learn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 to be able to track inventory. So, that's the genesis of where my family life kind of started from. Not with a gold spoon in our mouth. Obviously, by the time I came around, my family had done fairly well. But the truth is, I grew up in an area, funny enough, in Kingston, in Kingston 6 near Grand Spen. And I grew up on the outskirts of what they call an inner city community on Grand Spen called Andrews Pen Lane. And it's funny enough, I grew up with a lot of the kids. If you heard me earlier, I say about the kids down the lane, I grew up with the kids down the lane. So everything a traditional uptown kid would not have learned, like building a kite, making a box truck, making what I call a bingy, or what you uptown folks would call a slingshot. I learned all of these lovely things growing up as a child. And one of the things I'm so grateful for is that it taught me to be self-sufficient. When I talk to my friends today about running a boat, most of my friends, if you're not from uptown, for example, if you're from uptown, they'll be like, what is running a boat? They had no clue that these are the things we did as kids after school, before your parents came home from school. So, I got that resourcefulness from growing up with those kids down in Andrews Pen Lane, which gave me the first start in terms of, learning to manage resources. And then now to jump a lot forward, 20, 30 years to moving back to Canada, that actually stemmed from a divorce I was going through at the time. And I'll tell you that I genuinely believe that God makes no mistakes in anyone's life. Going through something like a divorce is not something I would ever wish on my worst enemy, especially when you have a child. But it was almost a turning point. Not almost, it was a turning point in my life where God had spoken to me and said to me, Jay, there were things about you as an individual that you need to change. And let me tell you, Tamara, when God speaks to you, you must listen. And if you don't listen, my grandmother used to say, if you make your bed hard, you're going to learn it. And that was one of the issues for me. So my transition to Canada wasn't easy. My ex-wife at the time wanted to move back to Canada because she went to school there as well. And at that point, the marriage wasn't working out. And, she said that she and my daughter were moving back to Canada, whether or not I wanted to move. Now, I supported her. They eventually moved. So I was going back and forth, which I actually still am today. Sold all our assets, made sure that they were okay. And in missing my daughter so much, I eventually decided to move back after a while, because I could not stand to be away from her too long. This is my daughter that I'm talking about, and she is definitely, folks, if you don't believe in God, take my word today that God is real, because my daughter was sent on this earth for me as an angel to save my life. Wow. Believe you me when I tell you. So it's funny that in moving back to Canada, I actually moved back with nothing, because I made sure that they were okay and had a good start. And as a man, I believe that you must provide for your family, even if you have to sacrifice everything, so be it. So I moved back, got an apartment with a friend, and funny enough, for the first 2-3 months of my time back in Canada, I slept on the floor in the winter, because I moved back in October.
You slept on the floor in the winter?
Yeah, for a good while, because at the time I sold the business in Jamaica, sold most of our assets, if not all, moved back, made sure they were okay. And it's so funny how God is so good, and I'm going to stress God a lot, because I promised God that if I ever made it to anywhere in life, I would make sure everybody know that it is God's work that has allowed me to reach here. But I applied for many jobs at the time while I was there, and I didn't get a call back from anybody except for one company, which was in another city outside of Toronto, which for me, sleeping on the floor and driving in the winter, maybe an hour every day to and from work. But it's so funny that company that I worked with became the catalyst for LinkedIn Lenders Real Estate of today. And so I know it was a test from God to say, Jason, are you really serious and willing to make the sacrifice to do what you have to do to become successful? And, it's funny, I know a friend of mine found his neighbor selling an old car. So I was driving in an old car in the winter, sleeping on the floor for the first couple months. And I remember Steve Harvey making a statement in one of his shows saying that if every morning you wake up, you are able to open your eyes, that simply means that God is not finished with you. And every single day in the dark, on the floor, in the cold, I would open my eyes, and all I could hear God saying to me is move. And all I did was get up and move. And I moved, and every day it's just keep moving, one day at a time. Martin Luther King has a saying, you don't need to worry about seeing I'm not quoting him properly, see the top of the staircase, you only need to see the next step in front of you. So I just want to encourage people, yes, have the dream, have the vision, keep the dream alive, but don't worry about getting to the end goal, because I'm not at my end goal yet either.
Certainly your journey, especially that, that part regarding your experience after selling everything and going back to Canada, very riveting, very touching, and seeing how your faith really helped you to overcome that challenging aspect of your life and keep you pushing forward. So what happened that led you to return now to Jamaica? I mean, you're still back and forth as you mentioned, but to start now LinkedIn Lenders, because you mentioned your experience at that company was the impetus. So right. Tell us now the initial start of LinkedIn Lenders and subsequently the Real Estate Hub.
Right. So truth is that, I was working in this company in Canada, similar type of makeup where it is a financial technology company that operates at the core of an entire, excuse me, in this case, it was a car industry, of the entire industry, supported by one online platform. And that platform basically, which is linked to lenders today, enables consumers to do one online application, and that application goes to multiple lenders and banks at one time. And those banks then basically bid on your application and offer you different terms for you as a consumer to pick the best option without you physically having to take time to go to a bank. Right now, that platform, again, going back to my mom, she came up to visit one summer, and I showed her the platform that I was using, and she said to me, "Boy, Jay, you don't think something like this could work in Jamaica?" And ironically, I had similar idea maybe 10, 15 years before. And, again, here we go again. She just spurred on that thought in my head of, why don't you come back to Jamaica and do this? And again, I'd like to encourage everybody. Now, I'm seen as an anomaly because not many people leave Jamaica to go abroad, to come back to Jamaica. And I've done it twice or maybe 3 times in my life. And I want to say this to people that Jamaica is, and the rest of the Caribbean, is the land of opportunity. I know everybody thinks of America and Canada as, but those countries are very competitive. There are a lot of services, technological needs here in Jamaica that do not exist, and we can change the lives of our people here. So the long and short of it is that I decided with another friend who still lives in Canada to rebuild this platform for the Jamaican market. And that's what I did, using my own little savings that I did have working while in Canada. And then having good contacts in Jamaica, as you alluded to earlier, I came back and pitched the idea to a number of investors. And because I worked in the banking sector, in the investment banking sector before, I knew people in the industry. So the fit was not seamless, but fairly simple to get the right people on board.
Certainly. And of course, as we mentioned, if you obviously want to know more about Jason's business, a link to lenders, and how you can access the services, I will put the website link. You'll see that link right there. And it will also be in the bio. All right. So Jason, so moving forward, because you mentioned in terms of, your business journey, your personal relations, challenges as well, but still being somebody who is filled with faith and moving forward. Why do you do that? Because, just sharing from your experiences, many would have given up. Many would have, you go through a rough patch in your business life, or you go through a rough patch in your relationship. Some people would be like, they can't bother. So what keeps you moving forward no matter what?
Again, I go back now. Let me just declare to everybody, I'm not a devout Christian like that in a sense. I do go to church. I do believe in God, but there is something. Again, take back to what I said originally. There is something that you as an individual know within inside of you what your purpose is. My thing is, I've been very lucky to figure that out from I've been very young. As I think back about my life, I can't say there was any time in my life that there was something that I wanted to achieve or had a passion for that I did not do. So what I have a good ability, and I encourage everybody else to do, is to drown out the noise. Put down the cell phone, turn off the TV, YouTube, whatever it is, and focus on what your God-given talent or what your passion is. And I said, funny enough, in our podcast, that if I were not doing this, I'll be very honest with you, I think I'd rather be dead. And it is because I've found what, and it's not about link to lenders or the real estate hub, but just utilizing that God-given talent of turning whatever problems you see in the world or in Jamaica and turning it into a business is something that I think is genuinely a gift. I know people might say, Jason, that can't be a gift, but to me, that is a gift. Just like how you can play football or somebody plays basketball. And this gift has always been with me as I think back on the last 40 years of my life, basically. So I said to myself, why not utilize this gift? And I think every time something comes up or some failure hits me in life, God keeps speaking to me again. And God is not a loud voice. God is a silent nudge or something in your mind that says, this is what you should be doing. And I just listen and I just keep going, that kind of way. So that is what has enabled me to be sitting here today still talking to you.
I love that. I just listen and I just keep going. That is so crucial because it's one thing to hear or to listen, but do you follow through? Do you keep going?
Right.
Jason is doing that. You've mentioned a bit about your mom throughout this interview. Would you say that she's your biggest encourager?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I can't deny that because everything that I do, and we have more than one business, by the way. She's involved in it. She's my go-to person every single time. Just before we started here, we're actually working on, and just be clear, we haven't gotten the approvals yet, but we're working on doing a development in St. Catherine. And again, she's my first go-to person. And I just messaged her a while ago this morning at 7 o'clock or whatever time it was to say, Mom, as soon as I finish the podcast with Tamara, I need to come on me today to talk to you about this. And she's like, sure. So if you're a parent, I encourage you folks to listen to your children because they are the future. Them know what's going on. We are kind of stuck in our own little world. So my mom has always encouraged me in that way, and more than just encourage, she's always put her money or her talent where her mouth is. If you understand what I mean by that. No, we butt heads all the time, but you know how it go when you have a parent. It's like I can butt heads with you, but nobody else can butt heads with her, type of thing.
Awesome. We're winding down, Jason, but on a lighter note, I know you're into your fitness and gym. Is that your way? Because obviously,
Tamara, don't tell nobody that, please. I beg you. Yeah.
You are, and I mean, especially as somebody who works a lot. You're running, your companies, you're doing so many different things. It's also important to have your me time, your time to unwind, to relax. Is the gym your outlet to do that?
Absolutely. I would say to you that the gym for me is almost like a godsend as well. It is a part of my life. Now, the reason why I hesitated a while ago, why I stopped it, because I know people will look at me and say, but he don't look like he go to the gym. Now, the truth is that my diet is equally as bad, but the truth is that the gym is my, people ask me, Jason, why do you go to the gym 5-6 days a week? And then on the other days, I'm playing football or I'm running up a hill. It's just that 1 hour of exercise is kind of like my time. People see it as exercise. I see the gym as therapy. On top of my mother, God, and my daughter, and my family saving my life. Let me tell you something. Folks, if you are struggling from something like depression or going through a hard time in life, go and do some exercise. Get out, go and lift weights, whatever it is. It literally has saved my life. And I don't think I will ever stop. I have a vision for myself. At 80 years old, I will be the oldest and fittest 80-year-old in the gym.
Ah, I love that. Well, that's many years to go, but keep at it as you've been keeping at it with your business and pushing forward. Final question for you, Jason. You've shared a bit. I mean, we could talk so much more about your own, life story and your journey, but we are out of time. But final question for you is, what would you give as your word of encouragement? You've encouraged throughout the interview, but your main word of encouragement to our viewers, to our listeners, in terms of pursuing their purpose, pursuing their dream, pursuing their goal, no matter the obstacle, no matter the challenges, no matter their mistakes, no matter what they've been through.
I'm going to reiterate everything I've been saying is first of all, listen to that quiet voice that you hear in your mind. Some people, if you don't believe in God, that's fine. Call it your subconscious, call it the universe. I don't care what you want to call it. But that silent voice in your mind is telling you who you are as a person. Follow that. Drown out the noise of the rest of the world, your family. Sometimes your own mother or your own father will tell you not to do something. Take the advice, but listen to your own advice. Listen to that voice. The second thing is, if it's speaking specifically to business, do not look at problems and leave them at problems. Find solutions. Create a mind of a solution-oriented mind, and test. And then the third thing and the most important thing again is to execute, right? I stress it to people all the time. I have so many friends who have had so many good ideas over the years, and I'll tell you a few of them 20 years later have not executed on any of them. Do not take these wonderful ideas to your grave. There's a saying, I think Les Brown has this saying, that the richest place on earth is a cemetery, right? So I just want to encourage people, give it a try. Truthfully, there's almost no such thing as failure. Just keep wheeling and coming again, if there's such a term, and just never give up. I think the only way you really fail is if you give up.
I love that. I love that. Such an inspiring gentleman, Jason Dare, Managing Director of Link to Lenders and also the Real Estate Hub. Well, as we said, he's the chief servant. Jason, thank you so much. As he mentioned, that Les Brown quote, do not go to the grave with your dreams, your ideas, your aspirations. Execute. That's a crucial word. Execute them. Thank you so much. Keep blazing your trail. You're such an inspiration, such a funny, quote unquote, not... let me say hilarious, such a hilarious gentleman as well, and we love his personality. And of course, if you want to know more about Link to Lenders or the Real Estate Hub, the link is in the bio, and it's also the website is mentioned below. Thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you for having me.
I'm Tamara McKayle, a television and radio presenter, producer, communication specialist, and of course, producer and host of the Trailblazers series. I'm inviting you, yes, you, to join our family. All you have to do is just click that subscribe button right below. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you're alerted as to when we have new episodes. And of course, join our family for weekly inspiring and uplifting episodes that will give you the tools, the keys, and the strategies that you need so that you can blaze your trail.